Hey, Brainiacs, it's Dwight. Guess what is back? After several years of hiatus, That Pop This Life, one of the preeminent Core Temp Arts podcasts on the Core Temp Arts podcast network, of which The Broken Brain is a proud member. Carly and Cynthia, that's Carly Beaumont and Cynthia Torres, are bringing back the great show That Pop This Life, where they talk about pop culture, life, and the ridiculousness of it all. So I missed ridiculousness is just one word, as it turns out. So you know Carly Beaumont if you listen to The Broken Brain. She's been on quite frequently. She and Cynthia came on years ago to talk about internet behavior and etiquette and things like that, of how to be a good consumer of pop culture. They've been on and talking about those things. So you know them, you love them. If you don't, go listen to them. You'll know them and love them. They just dropped a new reintroduction to the podcast episode, and I predict, even if you've never heard the show before, you will enjoy it quite a bit, as they're talking about where they've been, how life has changed, and so on and so on. This episode talks quite a bit about that as well. As we get into it, Sharon Blady and I talking about the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special this year, and if it really addresses heartwarming things with families and such. So we'll dig into that now, but don't forget to check out the newest episode of That Pop This Life. Go to coretemparts.com or look it up wherever you get your freshly baked podcasts.
The Broken Brain.
Yes, this will be fun, as we were just saying as I'm setting up the record. We'll kind of see what happens. Sometimes we come at these Marvel things with themes. I mean, there's a couple of reactions I had, but it'll be interesting to see where we go with it. And then the title,
awesome.
Those listening will already know, because the title will probably reflect it. So you'll see the title will say.
Yeah, and everyone knows, this is spoiler fest.
Right. Absolutely. This is designed for those who have either watched the Guardians of the Galaxy Christmas special on Disney Plus, or, I don't want to judge wherever people get it, but that's the only place I think it streams. Mm-hmm. Or you don't care. And this is not a very spoiler heavy. There's a couple things in there, we'll get into. But
I think that's the thing about holiday specials. There's a certain, it's like a parallel universe if it's part of another universe anyways. And there's a certain batch of little tropes and things that you kind of come to expect, or that work their way in there. And that, if you're expecting this to have radically alter the MCU canon or something like that,
Right. Yeah. In fact, I read somewhere that they were going to put in an end. Was it in this one? Let me think. Oh, wait a minute. I'm thinking of Wakanda Forever. But I didn't know this when we recorded about Wakanda Forever. I don't think, is that they were going to have an end credit sequence where there was a person lurking around some scene that had a cloak, a big green cloak with a hood or whatever, that it was clearly Dr. Doom.
Yeah.
And so, but they decided not to put it in because it was not in keeping with the thing. If I said that on the thing we recorded, sorry about that, everyone.
No, you didn't.
I can't keep
it's only
track.
Spoiler here.
I'm like,
and I think that was a good call. I could see where the motivation would be to do it, and then at the same time, the better judgment to go, let's just keep with the tone. It was there.
And it's always interesting when you have otherworldly or, people who are not on Earth, and you have Christmas. If you have an Earth tie-in, it helps the writers to do it. That's why, I think I said before on the one last week, my brother and sister and I were talking about Christmas specials on the episode that comes out either tomorrow or last week when I air this, probably last week. But anyway, it's always funny when you watch, when I was a kid, watching the He-Man Christmas special and saying, what the hell do they know about Christmas? And all of a sudden they're like, well, my mom's an astronaut from Earth or something. And I think they said, or something. I can't remember. And then they all looked at the camera and shrugged, even though it was animated.
So we have to have something that explains this weird little bit of tangential knowledge or whatever that has no reason to exist in this universe.
Right. Unless you're going to pull the trigger and call it Winter Day or Life Day, I think was George Lucas's attempt.
Exactly.
One of the interesting things is they included a couple little cartoon thingies in this special, which I think were a callback to the infamous Star Wars Christmas special, which has weird animation peppered in. I don't know.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering if that was a thing too, or I was like, what, they couldn't get the actor that played Yondu or something like that? Like, what's
I
that?
think he voiced it, didn't
so
he?
they have to animate around this?
Yeah, exactly. He's like, no, not me. I'm busy wassailing. So,
Yeah.
no, I think it was meant to be some throwback to that, I imagine. But I don't know. I'm not sure that it totally worked here or not. The other thing, too, is we do continue to retcon Yondu as a nicer person, which, it's fine. But it's just kind of funny that when you watch the first Guardians, you are not under the impression that this is his surrogate father who is like, I mean, they have a thing, that kind of relationship, but it's an abusive surrogate father. And then the second one, it's like, but you're my real dad. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Or that idea that you say, like the retcon where it's your first visions of him are, again, that what you see externally, this, that, and whatever. And then you find out that there was actually, okay, maybe he's a nicer guy than you think, but he's got a reputation to uphold, or, doesn't have healthy parenting and interpersonal skills or whatever. So he's doing his best. So, yeah, but I've been noticing the same thing, like, once you have a Mary Poppins, there's like a what?
Right, exactly. It's hard not to, right? So yeah.
And then, She-Hulk's line about daddy issues, two daddies,
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, what is superhero universe without daddy issues, and mother loss, I think usually is how it works. Those are the storytelling tropes. So one of the thoughts I had about this actually was a discussion I've had with a couple people, which is what makes a special actually feel like a special, and kind of like, are there heartwarming bits? That's one thing a lot of people say. Is there is there music? There's music actually in this.
Yeah.
One of my favorite lines I have a few, but one of my favorite lines is when the aliens finish playing after they say, "Yeah, we're messing around with these Earth instruments," and they play this great number.
Yeah.
And then Star-Lord is like, "Do you guys just got these?"
Yeah, exactly.
And so I also like the tone of, and I've seen this in the MCU in general, is calling out some of the nonsense tropes and things. They have a character go like, well, that doesn't seem right, or whatever, sometimes. And they did that. This one, I think Guardians are very self-referential in their humor, I think.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, it totally, like all of, Peter's different comments, like during the song, these other things, or the, thanks for the gift, but human trafficking,
We kidnapped
like
someone
just
for
the
you.
fact that he actually used the phrase human trafficking, like that's like, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Well, again, and I think that fits into the larger thing where so many of these holiday specials, there's always, it's something that's well-intentioned, and then it goes awry, and then eventually all, works itself out, which again also fits into the larger superheroes and superpower whoopsies. We have epic whoopsie here.
As far as I know, I think you and I coined that phrase. I've never heard it anywhere else. But yeah, exactly. That was my thought too. It's like when she says to Drax, "Don't kill anyone," and he's like, "Well, how was I supposed to know?" So there's like this. It's kind of, there's this normalcy to using these superpowers in a way that is, it's like, "Oh, I'll throw a car. Don't throw a car. I already threw it. Sorry."
Well, but again, I think that was the part that I loved, was basically the entire premise that they built on. Again, first of all, ties into that whole retconning thing, like, oh, okay, so here we are. Because I've always loved the Guardians. I mean, yes, it happens with Avengers, but they seem to be like the sub unit of the family model, in a way that isn't necessarily the same way with the Avengers. They're more of a team and peers, whereas you get these family dynamics in Guardians, I find. And again, kind of like the quintessential functional, non-functional, or dysfunctional, like it's the,
It's right, but there's yet this loyalty there and very similarity. And, you really kind of have to hunt in the MCU to find families that are intact because of death, and betrayal, and all of the narrative things. I mean, I know we talked a little about, Hawkeye being the most, Hawkeye's family, and let's see, the other one would be
and Ms. Marvel, like Kamala's family.
Wonderful family.
Yeah.
And the family, the Eternals, everybody's forgotten about, but Brian Tyler Henry's character, I don't remember the name of the character, but he has.
I want to say it's on the tip of my tongue. I want to say something like Phaedrus, but I can't. Again,
yeah, I think his magic power is he makes machines appear and tech appear. Something. Eternals happened. Yeah. I don't think we even did a thing about it. So it happened. It isn't talked about much, but that family, his husband and his child, and so you've got a few of those that are intact, and of course. Once again, Tony and Pepper settle down, but they're too happy. You can't have that, so they get punished for it. And that's how these work. But anyway, so that's an interesting. I hadn't thought about that exactly as Guardians as a intact family-ish unit, a found family.
A found family, a self-created family, people that become with, again, even just the idea of the origins with Yondu and Peter, right? Mm-hmm. The weird dysfunctional father figure where it's like I'm supposed to go do the thing. Oh, that's not cool. Okay, I'm just going to hold on to him. Oops, now I've got a surrogate son kind of situation. And so I that's what I liked was the family, and then they obviously upped the family ante. There, they update that whole thing with Mantis and the whole, his dad is my dad.
Exactly. And let's get into that. That was the one that I thought, well, they just made that up now or something. Maybe it was always intended. I don't know Guardians in the comics well enough to know if that's, I don't even, I don't know the storylines of Guardians to know if that's ever been done before.
And again, that was one of the things that in terms of any kind of MCU retcon or whatever that's like altering is that. And at that, it's not all that huge. It doesn't do something where you're suddenly reorganizing different relationships or dynamics. Exactly. Like, hold on, what's the ripple effect?
Yeah.
Which would be radically different if it turns out like, oh, wait a second, Stephen Strange was, Tony Stark's long lost brother or something. Mm-hmm. Then, okay, I think we were, if that was to be the case, I think we'd have some other questions like, what was Tony's dad doing kind of thing. So it's not of that level, like to go, okay, Ego is Mantis's dad too.
Right.
Okay, well, I'm not, honestly, what we know of him is like, there's probably 500,000 siblings, scattered across the various multiverse aspects of the multiverse, like ultimate deadbeat dad,
Sort of the biggest, sort of the biggest weird, gross part of Guardians 2 was, was that part, the worst part as far as the worst thing, a pretty bad thing for a villain to have done, even comparatively to some of them. I mean, you got Hela just wants to take over everything. That's straightforward. Loki sometimes wants to. Thanos, his thing was terrible, but it's like, that involves like women's lives and kids, very, very dysfunctional. Yeah. We don't have to go into Kurt Russell's character, but very interesting kind of
So that's what I'd say. Like the premise there is, well, again, while there's an ick factor there, at the same time, it's not, that's like, okay, wouldn't surprise me,
Do you? So did you get the feeling? I wasn't clear on it. Did he create Mantis like he created the planet and he created his own body, or did he actually contribute in the traditional way?
I kind of got the impression that it was a little more parallel to Peter. Like, if we were to look into the Mantis backstory, it would be like her and this, with the single mom or or a stepfather raising her or something like that. Like,
sure.
That was kind of the impression that I got in terms of the whole, shared dad.
That's interesting too, because that begs the question, I guess, did he leave her alive because she has some powers? Maybe because he, got rid of all the others who had no powers, so we don't know that, but that's just a thought question. But what did you think of that, of the decision? I mean, let's throw this under the heartwarming umbrella. You could read it as, wow, it's sweet. And I had the experience of tearing up when they had their little, I have a sister. Oh my gosh, wow, At the same time, you could also accuse it of emotional manipulation by making up something in the narrative that wasn't there before. And I guess they're not mutually exclusive.
Well, I mean, I think that's the other part too, is that when you look at a lot of these things, and again, any kind of a holiday special, there's always something that is, again, like you say, it's under the heartwarming thing. And then it doesn't necessarily have to be big or huge, but it's that idea of, putting something right, or, doing something nice for someone. And then again, somewhere along the lines, things go awry, and then how it all comes back. And so I think there was that idea, again, to that idea of family connection. So in other words, again, so many of these things are about family. So, okay, let's introduce an element that takes the family from being found family, fictive family, to there's actually some kind of a connection, even again, if it's through the same deadbeat dad.
Found in an entirely different way, discovered, actually.
Yeah,
discovered
exactly.
Biological family.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, again, to me, it was one of those, like, even if it's a stretch or whatever, and again, a weird retcon, it's sort of it's mostly harmless in that regard in terms of affecting the universe. And it kind of fits right into the broader, well, we need some sort of warm, fuzzy premise on which to build this, and then also on which to have things go awry. I mean, I think the only way it could have been weirder was if she brought, instead of bringing Drax along, she had brought Rocket. Like, it just would have been a different flavor of wacky and things going wrong. I need Santa's leg, or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So, that would get darker. Rocket is
exactly. So weirdly enough,
darker.
Drax was less, of a problem. I think it also too plays to the idea of Drax's literalism, in that sense, which again, often I think is sometimes, in terms of family communications, especially around holidays, where something goes awry because, well, I didn't know you meant this about that. And that's why I brought mashed potatoes rather than scalloped potatoes. And I didn't realize the world would fall off its axis without the correct type of potato at the table.
And it also goes into the found family dynamic too, of Drax and Drax having lost a daughter, and Mantis having not ever really had a good dad experience. I feel like there's a father-daughter dynamic. I mean, they get past in the movie about, oh, I'm not attracted to you. I'm not attracted to you either. Oh, okay, good. And, they kind of throw that in there. And very, very funny, of course, because he's always telling her how ugly she is. And I think at one point she says something to him like, in the movie, oh, I'm not attracted to you. You're not attractive to me. And he's like, oh, you don't have to be mean. So his lack of social, but it ties in too with I keep mentioning Guardians 2, but one of my favorite little shots there is when they're on the planet's about to blow up, and Drax is carrying Mantis, who's hurt. He starts sinking into the ground, and he lifts her above his head. And the interesting thing about that is that was very father-daughter moment, because it's like, I mean, maybe you'd do that for a friend if you could, of course, but it's kind of like he's not going to save her in that moment. He can't. She's going down too in a second, but he lifts her so that there's a second or two longer that she will survive, right? And if there's any chance of promoting survival for this person. And that's very parental instinct, to be like, well, I'm gone, but let me try to at least give you a few seconds. Maybe something will happen. And that was probably the most touching part of Guardians 2 for me. And so to see them together was cool. It was cool.
Mm-hmm. Oh, no, it was. And it was a lot of fun because, again, usually there's always the focus on, again, other folks or their, so to have the two of them, especially Mantis, kind of front and center. Yes. And it was interesting. You got to see sort of another side. You got to go down. And again, it played on those, again, like you say, those family relationships, whether they're fictive or found. And it was a lot of fun. And like I said, to me, it was also, like I said, it encapsulated all of the different kinds of misunderstandings, and that it was a series of, I guess you'd say another thing too is it's about intention versus impact, right? So they had very wonderful intentions. And how often do we, again, going into the holidays, whether it's getting gifts for somebody, doing this, doing that, and your intentions are well placed, and then your impact is just something else, and then and it's very different from what you intended. And then this adds that superhero factor in, where we've talked about with the whoopsies, when we do it, yes, there can be problematic and traumatic impact, but we're not flipping cars over. Oh,
you brought me a human.
Yeah, exactly.
An adult human man is in my gift here. And of course, yeah. And we'll get into Kevin Bacon in a second. But I had a thought as you're saying that. First of all, how good is it to see? And the performer, I apologize, I don't know her name off the top of my head. The performer who plays Mantis, she really got an opportunity to shine in this one, kind of front and center. And the thought that I had that was one of my favorite parts of the special, is that the dynamic, the choice to have Mantis not only kind of like head up this little project, but she's clearly the leader in this mission, right? She is telling Drax, do this, do that. And there's a little reversal parenting when he's like, hey, you got your decoration. Can I go back for mine? She's like, I was responsible and kept a hold of mine.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't put the candy cane down. If you dropped your little green man there, that's a you problem.
That's your problem. Right. And so, but the thing that's really interesting is it gives not just her a chance to step it up as far as we get to see her, but it also it reminds me of one of the ways that we get to express ourselves at Christmas. And I've known lots of people who, if there is either a distance or even a big problem, or even if the relationship's going really well, a holiday time or a present giving or any opportunity like that is an opportunity to either increase the relationship closeness or to communicate love and affection, especially if it's like, I got to go to some amount of trouble to remember that this is important to this person, to go out and find it. And, those kinds of things are actually even more memorable than whatever the present is, I think. And so that's interesting to see her taking that opportunity.
Well, and I think that was the part that was sweet about it was this idea of, well, gee, we've got again this story about, how Christmas was ruined for him. And so again, this idea that you can see that other people, like the band playing the music and all this kind of stuff, that, okay, there's something in the air here. It's not here. He's, and I think that's the other part too, is they played into, and as happens in a lot of these Christmas holiday or the Christmas and other holiday things, is where it's the drudgery of normal life. And how busy and overworked, and this is that idea of a break from it. So you see him and it's just like, oh, we've done all of these things and here we are now, like basically like doing boring inventory, signing stuff off, very like, this is just like, oh my God, there is the clipboard, for God's sake. Like what kind of, here, Guardians of the Galaxy doomed by paperwork. Oh, wait a sec, is that in triplicate? Did you press hard enough on the page? That kind of thing. So he, I think that was one of the things that it kind of brought in as well. And then that idea of, again, family doing something. And you're right. I think it gave her the opportunity to really shine that way. And again, create a sense of family where, she hasn't had one. And so, yeah, there again, a lot of these things, like I said, seem to fit into larger tropes, but at the same time, they did it well. And that it was fun. And like you say, it was a bit of, it pulled at all the right emotional heartstrings, while at the same time then devolving into, the wackiness of the adventure. It's
and by the way, it's Pom Klementieff. I may have said that wrong,
yes,
but that is her name. I wanted to make sure to get that out. So you're absolutely right when you look at it, and that's one of the things that they introduce that will obviously have to play into Guardians 3. Which is that they've purchased Nowhere. They've somehow bribed or kicked out the Collector. And we get to meet Cosmo, the Russian space dog that is featured big in the comics. And there was an animated series where traditionally Nowhere is the headquarters of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Mm-hmm. And of course, who knows what we're going to see in the next movie. But, this gives us a chance to at least see them all together. The Guardians 3, we'll see them all together, but I don't think we'll have another movie with these exact same players together. That's just my guess. Batista said he doesn't want to. Saldana might not want to. They're sure pushing some like sad stuff with Rocket in the preview. Although I think they'd have a fan riot if they kill Rocket. That's just my opinion.
Oh God, yeah. No.
I'm hoping. And that's also a voiced part they can do from Bradley Cooper's, closet, probably. He probably has a microphone set up somewhere in a closet. What am I saying? I'm sure he has a studio if he wants one in his house. Take that. And if anyone knows Bradley Cooper out there, tweet or email and let us know if he has a studio in his home. With COVID, everybody needed one. So, you see that connection that all of these particular people have, and we get to see them, interestingly enough, after 2 movies and several other appearances in other movies. Now they're set up the way they are in the comics and the animated show, where they always were. And so it's like, okay, we're now positioned in nowhere, and we've got, once again, the dog was always one of my favorite parts. That whatever I knew about Guardians, when the movie was coming out, was that they had this dog, which I believe the backstory is it was launched into space in a Russian ship and never returned to Earth, and it presumed dead, obviously, but he somehow is out there and has a machine that makes him talk, because it's awesome.
Yeah, it is, exactly. And again, the banter between him and Rocket, and it's like, what's the point of these powers if you can't use them properly? Like, always a critic kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah, and you had, along with it, you have this interesting, very interesting dynamic of people giving presents, to each other. Kind of thing. You see Rocket finally getting at least some version
Bucky's
of
arm.
Bucky's arm.
I love that. That was one of my favorite. I mean, of all the people you're gonna, that's got a limb that actually comes off and that you could, potentially covet. You could see him
yes,
wanting,
exactly.
Bucky's arm. I'm sure Bucky has a spare.
It seems, yeah. Let's hope so. He was last we saw. I think he was going to Wakanda, wasn't he? So I'm not sure, but he goes there sometimes. They can probably make him one. Shuri will hook him up with a vibranium arm or something like that. He'll land. You'll land better than you were, Bucky. But no, very interesting, and especially when they do it between these 2 characters: Rocket, who's famously abrasive, and Nova, who doesn't give a shit about anybody. Basically. Or at least that's what. She
I mean that was the whole thing. Like, Nebula the whole time was just did not want a part of any of this. It's like, Christmas family. But again, think of the family that she's from. Yeah, you said no, but it's okay. I think yeah. Anyways, Nebula. But the point is like, she's not exactly huge on the family stuff, and gee, why would she be? I mean, again, holy wacky dysfunctional and daddy issues kind of thing. Like, yeah. You had Thanos for a dad who did this to you, and you ended up, with a psychotic urge to kill people and weird vengeance hangups. Gee, I don't know how that would happen.
Well, and it's interesting. I'm going through them all now. They all are victims of trauma, although we've established already that superheroes typically are. In this case, though, I'm trying to think, are they all victims of abuse? I think we don't know anything about Groot's background. He seems, we don't know.
Groot would be the only one, that we don't know, because, I mean, you think about, Nebula and Gamora were 2 different variations on a narcissistic abuse, both physical, psychological, especially physical in Nebula's case. And then again, what's happened with Drax and his loss, again, kidnap. And again, I think that's the other part too, when you think about Peter, when he comments on Kevin Bacon, it's like, there's a little bit of familiarity, like, excuse me, as somebody also kidnapped off the earth, as a fellow Karen scooped up by people that, against my will, not cool with this, totally not cool with this, and you do this to my hero. Oh, wait a minute,
As far as we know, Drax's family life, the only things we do know is it was okay. It was good.
Yeah, it was okay. And that the trauma is really more about the loss of the family rather than anything, fundamentally or dysfunctionally wrong with them.
Yeah. Yeah, there is either, loss or abuse or trauma also, of course. We, talk a lot about that in these stories. That's the currency of the superhero universe. And the fuel in the tank, so to speak. But but these particular Well, I guess that's two out of the others that didn't necessarily survive abuse. Although you could say Drax is abused by the system, the government in place at the time murdered his family. So, that
Yeah.
works. He can slide in that criteria. And then Groot, we just don't know if there's even any other Groots out there or if he's been spawning himself, for all this time. Who knows? But
Well, on a sidebar, if you get a chance to watch the little shorts that are on Disney Plus, the
with
little
the baby Groot.
Yeah. They're hilarious. Some of them are they're darkly hilarious.
They are, yeah. I was surprised. I was watching that the other day, and my daughter loves them. But yeah, exactly. There's a little weird alien on board shapeshifter. He does a little like dance party, but then only to trick him into the airlock so you can shoot him into space.
Yeah. It's like, this is fun. Who are you? You're mimicking me. No, I'm going to get you here. Bye. That one was funny because, and I don't know what happened. I also watch K-dramas on Disney. So my audio things are often set to Korean as a default with subtitles. And I was like 3/4 of the way through that. And it wasn't until one of when the watery character basically said, "I'm Groot" in Korean. And then, it was when then in the headphones, and it's that little thing that he has, and he takes it off and you hear all the different voices about how many steps. And I had been listening to the characters that, both the real Groot saying "I am Groot" in Korean, and it didn't register to me as Korean. And it wasn't until this other part, and I'm like, wait, oh man, I've been watching this for like a minute and a half in the wrong, and it didn't even register. I mean, he's saying "I am Groot," and I understood.
Full immersion.
But it was hilarious. It was like other sentences where I had to like stop, translate. Wait a minute. And I went back and I checked. No, I've watched all the other ones. What happened to this episode? And why did it take me this long? Groot,
have you picked up? I mean, I don't know this. Do you speak Korean? Have you picked up?
No, I picked up little bits. I can understand more than I could speak for sure. And that was one of my like happy moments where it was like, oh, well, not like Groot saying a lot, but he was saying enough that it wasn't until more complicated sentences came up that I realized I no longer understood, and the light went on that it was a different language.
That's fun.
So, it's one of those things. But no, like those were weird little tangential thing, but those were really cute in terms of giving some background. But yeah, they don't really tell you about any trauma. It's more about like childhood shenanigans.
We definitely wouldn't want any tangents on one of our episodes.
Yeah. Yeah. Fast mind, left turn never happens.
I love tangents so much. When I edit it, I put more in. I don't take any out. So, no, I'll just go off about something. No, Mr.
I mean,
McKisney,
I would say in light of what Groot's been like, and the fact too that he just what he does. I would gather, like, especially the fact that, again, he had to be, like, in a sense, regrown or respawned. And, there's got to be a little something there.
Yeah. I would think so. Yeah, there definitely is loss. And if you look at the battle rage or whatever it is. So I think we can assume he's had a hard time. He's at least had to hang out with Rocket, which, I mean, I'd both love to hang out with Rocket and, that'd probably be hard as well. There's in the recent run of Shuri comics, I say recent, it's several years ago now. Awesome run. There's 2 volumes, and they're both great. But there's a part where Shuri. Sorry, I was saying Siri. I was trying not to say Siri, so my phone wouldn't go off.
Yeah.
Shuri is doing some astral projection. She's trying to find her brother, and she accidentally ends up inside Groot's head. And so she's controlling Groot. And all of a sudden Groot is with Rocket, and there's this monster attacking, right? And so Groot all of a sudden starts saying, "I am Shuri." And Rocket somehow, eventually Rocket figures out that Shuri is inhabiting Groot, of course,
Yeah.
So as they're battling this monster, at some point Shuri, through Groot, does some little device that has a bomb and will be perfect. She starts building this, and that's Rocket's jam. And so he's watching her do that, and he's just like, wow, you and I should hang out more often. Anyway, one of the aspects that we're seeing here, I really like this found family piece. When you look at kind of circling around, here's where we can talk about Kevin Bacon with the intention being good. But yet not really knowing how to follow through. Now you could have, obviously there's different customs for aliens, and especially alien criminals probably, and either alien criminals or the child slash personal assistant to a rogue evil god. I mean, it probably warps your sense of etiquette at least. However, it does mirror in that a sense of like, oh, if I've never had a good family experience or a good relationship experience or whatever, and I go out and find people and they're healthy, I'm not necessarily going to know how to conduct myself.
Honestly, as somebody that's, still on the journey of working through my trauma, the number of times where I have had the whole, and it's taken, talking with another colleague or talking with, the person that I work with, and you have that, oh, so that was actually blah, 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 blah. Oh, that's why. And when you see about not having a normal family, when I went off, guess it's probably 6-8 weeks ago to Toronto and was speaking at a conference. I ended up staying actually with a friend and her family. And what's interesting is that having known them through work, I had never been to her house before, despite the fact that we'd met several times, both here in Winnipeg and in Toronto and other places. And this was the first time immersed in her family. And it was this incredibly awesome experience. And I was sharing this with a friend of mine who's a psychiatrist, and it was like okay, well, by the way, did you think about it this way? And it was if anything, it's not, my comments are not to say it's any less awesome by, analyzing them, but have you thought about it this way? Because it actually makes them more awesome, and that you were literally getting part of your neural system rewired based on, oh, you're in a happy place. Oh, you're in a functional place. And so when you felt happy about that, and you're like, oh my God, like, because it was one of those things where, and again, I do think sometimes it's coming from the outside. So on one level, like I was getting it, but at the same time, I was like finding it weird. It was like oh, wow, this is great. This was happening. I was like, oh, it's because you were around functional people and you saw a functional, happy family that, problem solved in certain ways, that communicated in certain ways, that looked after each other, that had like healthy dynamics and all these other kinds of things. And it's like, so yes, it was fun. But it was also these other things too. And that's part of what made it even more fun for you. You're just like, oh my God.
Do you think something like this, a story like this, has the ability to worm its way around our defenses with things like that? I mean, things that could be triggering, are they less not necessarily being sneaky, but because of the format, superpowers, aliens, sci-fi tech, that type of stuff, humor, obviously. Mm-hmm. Do you think that it makes it more, I would say, palatable or less triggering for people, that they could watch something and say, I get it, yeah, on that level, and not necessarily be as jarring as if it was, hey, here's a Christmas special about a hard-hitting story of abuse and loss and found family.
And that our solution to bring happiness into their life is to kidnap someone. Yeah.
right. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So no, and I think that's what I love about these kinds of stories, and especially superheroes, is, and I mean, and again, we saw it back, even, Star Trek, how many decades ago, and just that whole idea that, hey, you put everybody on a spaceship with the prime objective, and suddenly you could, comment on what's going on in the political world during the time of the civil rights movement, and the X-Men. It's the same thing. It's like, you can make hard-hitting commentary, but do it in a roundabout, indirect way that it teaches the same lesson without teaching you. And so I think that's what, in the same way that you could touch on those big social justice issues, I think that's why it works so well for mental health and neurodivergence and trauma and all of these other things, because it actually gives you that cushion, and that it's not teaching and didactic, it's modeling and giving analogies that, like you say, people will relate to the warm fuzzy. They'll get the message. In some cases, they get the lesson, but they don't sit there and go, oh, I just learned a lesson about blah, 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 blah. Oh, I just, it's more of, it's sort of the same way that, when you think about it, if you're growing up, so much of your behavior and your responses are basically because what you've seen modeled in front of you, right? You do what the grown-ups are doing, whether it's healthy or unhealthy, whatever. And so you're not necessarily saying, and I'm 3 and I am currently individuating and learning interpersonal skills as my, as my father does this and my mother does that, and my older brother's response is X, right? You don't, you just, it's organic. And I think that's what these stories do is they, like you say, I get your idea about like worried about language, like infiltrating and all these kinds of things, but it does, right. It does work differently. The message is getting across. It's just not in that. And now we're going to sit down and learn about X.
I think, and there are no spoilers contained in what I'm about to say, just in case anyone wonders, for the movie Jojo Rabbit, except that it's cool. I really enjoyed Jojo Rabbit, and one of the critiques, and this is not a critique of anybody who is triggered by this, by the way, so if you don't like it for this reason, I don't have any beefs with you out there, but people were upset because it contains jokes amongst Nazis, and one of the jokes, which is not, I'm going to say here is not really totally a joke, is that this young man, Jojo, has an imaginary friend who is Hitler, right? For anyone who doesn't know. That's not a spoiler. That's in the trailers. And, Hitler's a little silly at first. But here's the thing. It's from a child's perspective. And my opinion about why they did that is that it actually sneaks under the radar in a way very similar to how a 10-year-old boy might fall into something. And then when he starts to evolve and doubt Nazism or whatever you want to call it, his imaginary friend starts to become verbally abusive and say, "You're not allowed to think that. What are you doing?" And there's this, some of the dialogue that's given the Hitler character when he starts to push back. There's this internal psyche that pushes back to the kid as he starts to lose the faith, so to speak, that then starts to call him names, that starts to get angry with him. Yeah. And so, so I personally, I would not recommend it. I would recommend it for that reason. And I think
it's hugely subversive. And I mean, but again, you're also talking about a writer and director that, is Jewish. So if there's anybody that can play with that and do it in a way that has that, again, playful subversiveness to it so that it gets the message across, it goes into territory that's very, very triggering, and so I can understand some folks just avoiding it based on the premise, and no harm, no foul, like you got your own boundaries. At the same time, I think it was actually very effective because it did show that thing, and that I think in some respects it showed how, using a child as that example of how people get suckered into something. And then at some point, their alarm bells go off with, "Oh, wait a minute, this is not cool. Oh, wait a second, this is beyond not cool. This is like, hugely problematic. Oh, wait a second, no, now we've moved on to evil," and yet doing it in a way that, again, you're watching the lights go on, but by putting it in the context of this kid, of this dynamic, and like I said, and the fact that it was again, Dag he's an awesome writer and director. So again, if anybody could do that and do it effectively, it's him. And I think he's done some other stuff again where he explores and in a sense almost by going into the ridiculous.
Yeah, some of which is in the Marvel universe, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. Oh well, and this is it. And this is what's what I've loved about his contributions to it, because some people are talking about how, well, it's this, it's that, and Thor's not like that. I'm like, have you read any Norse mythology? I mean, Thor's kind of like a fumbling goof sometimes. He's the big oafish guy that, keeps doing things and whatever. So it's actually, in keeping in some respects.
One of the difficult balances in something like this is to include humor and balance it out with the more, I don't know what you want to call them, more serious or more heartwarming, whatever it is, that there's a balance there. And I think in specials, Christmas specials, you do see, and other specials, I guess, of other, some of the, I don't know, you see specials in Thanksgiving, Halloween times, or other things like that.
Yeah.
They're balancing out whatever the property is, and the property of Guardians of the Galaxy is sort of like humor, pushing the envelope a little bit, being a little more crude than some of the other Marvel characters, that type of thing, being a little more criminal minded than the other. And so right away, I mean, you got a couple things that they have to take, like take the Peanuts Christmas special. You got a balance of everybody's really mean to Charlie Brown all the time. And he's trying, so hard, and everyone's like, nah, get out of here, Charlie Brown. And but yet at the same time, they pull off a heartwarming Christmas special because of somehow they have a balance there.
But I think that's it. We had that really good balance of, again, well-intentioned, actions, but still achieve through what were frankly criminal means. I mean, it's the whole. First of all, we're setting off to kidnap someone. And then we're going to root around and try to figure out, we're going to land on Hollywood Boulevard. We don't know what it is. Okay, wait a second. People are mistaking us for, I don't know what yet. Because again, but they're giving us money. Now we're going to go out and drink. Oh, wait a second. I've blown all of the money at the bar. But somebody now has a map to Kevin Bacon's house, but I don't know where the money is anymore. So I'm going to change her memory and make her give me, I'm going to use my powers and make her give me the map, go there. Yes, we'll start off by ringing the doorbell, but then we'll just move to can you throw me over the fence? Oh, wait a minute. I wasn't ready yet. What are you doing? Throw you over the fence? Not throw you over the fence. Like, which one is it? And then let's just go to so we're on to, trespassing. Then it's like, okay, well, let's start with some small grade, theft, take that to full on break and enter,
assault,
yeah. Like it just keeps escalating and escalating. Oh, wait a second. Now we're interfering with law enforcement. And one of the people is worried that, we've killed members of law enforcement.
Which I should add, they don't. I mean, they don't die. I mean, that would.
No, they don't. But it was just like that idea, like, oh God, I'm going to go check. Please don't be dead. And then right up to taking somebody, and then being disappointed at who they took, because Kevin Bacon wasn't in fact the superhero that they thought he was. He was just an actor. And again, that goes back to that whole thing we were talking about with like the humor and the kind of the crassness. And the self-referential nature of Guardians of the Galaxy is you got to, the characters are, actors are so bad. Oh, they're so evil. Oh, I'm so disappointed. And you're like, and screen full of actors.
Right.
Cast full of actors. So, it was all of those things, but you saw the humor in it. And I think it's exactly that, where you can use like this kind of context, I mean, heck, even just in a sense, it was its own version of, think of the classics like Home Alone, right? That was all about, folks doing criminal things and a kid, who was effectively abandoned.
Right.
Having to engage in borderline criminal activities as well for self-defense. Like it's that whole thing, like the shenanigans are all based on that. So no, I mean, I thought it was brilliant. And then of course they have the turnaround moment, the fact that they mess with Kevin Bacon's head. But the idea that you get to this place where, it's the guy on the receiving end of the gift going like, the box is moving. What's going on? And then again, the human trafficking concept and, snap him out of it. And it was like, and it was one of those things that he knew. It was like, as soon as he says like the idea of snapping, it was like, no, Kevin Bacon's going to freak out. Because he's going to go like, I'm on a foreign planet. There's a whole bunch of things I know. But the idea that it comes around, and that in the end, when Mantis says, the idea that I'm your sibling, he's like, that's the best present ever. Like, so in other words, she could have just said, hey, right. I'm your sister. We've never had family. I understand you've had some crappy Christmases, blah, blah, blah. But then again, we wouldn't have had a story, right? But in the end, that's the best Christmas present. You also get that moment where whoever it is that's been inconvenienced or whatever does I have a mission here. So I may, so it's not, some might argue it's a Stockholm syndrome kind of thing, but wait a second, this was not on my plans, but hold on, Kira, I'm going to be a little bit late. I've got some friends here that need to learn about Christmas. So I love the fact too that they tied in his family connections in his phone calls with Kira Sedgwick and that kind of stuff, that she was just this voice on the phone and the, oh yeah, got the gifts, everything's good, see you soon, dear,
She was massively okay with it too, which was really interesting,
Yeah.
which of course, in movies and stuff. But yeah, that's interesting too, where one of the things that I've run into with some of these properties, when you create a whole universe where superheroes exist and there's certain aspects of mythology that seem to be true and all that, people are often very easily shocked while still living in that universe. It's like, have you watched the news? Because everyone seems to know about it. Now, any home invasion is scary, so I'll give them that. But then when and also being hypnotized, blah, blah, blah. So I can get it. And so I thought it was actually kind of nice that he adjusted fairly quickly to the reality of the situation, because he lives in the MCU. This version of Kevin Bacon lives
exactly.
in the MCU.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And it's interesting too, like for Mantis to go to a place where it's like, well, I'd rather kidnap than have a honest heart to heart with my brother, and tell him. That actually goes back to that idea of you find healthy people, but yet you go back to your training of like, well, vulnerability was not probably a big emotional currency on the planet Ego, right?
Yeah.
You weren't going to be like, hey, Dad, or whatever. It was going to be more like, don't talk to me. Yeah. I'll just duck under the radar now for a while. And then help you go to sleep with my magic.
Oh yeah, I think of how much content is created out there where you start watching something, and in the first X number of minutes of whether it's a movie, a TV series, and you're like, well, why did they do X? And you're like, oh, plot point. Because if they did that other thing, the show would wrap up in 3.5 minutes, and we wouldn't have a story.
Yeah. Oh, right. It's the whole. Why didn't they use the magical time necklace on Harry Potter to solve every problem? Well, that'd be pretty exciting, wouldn't it? No, they're
exactly.
not going to do that. Because to a certain extent, we do want to watch it and enjoy it.
Yeah. So no, but again, I think that's what it also models really well, is that in the end that you see that all the literally Herculean efforts that you go through to do these things, and again the string of whoopsies that happened there, that in the end the most important thing for him was like, oh cool, I have a sister and she's been here the whole time and I didn't know she was my sister. This is awesome, best present ever. And so, next time ask me what I want, don't go kidnap anyone. And then the fact too that they, again, exchange gifts and, wish Kevin Bacon well. And he's like, see you at Easter.
Yes.
But like you say, he's the Kevin Bacon of the MCU, right? So he's lived through the blip. He knows about all of these superheroes. So yeah, ending up on nowhere in front of these folks on one level, is going to be shocking, but at the same time, it's less shocking than if he was non-MCU Kevin Bacon, one of us,
Yes, and if they're anything like this universe's Kevin Bacon and Kira Sedgwick, who are just, as far as I can tell, very, very charming people who are whimsical and, kind of just very much supportive of their kids and each other. Once again, what do I know? I don't know. I just know that, the stories that you hear about them making little videos for each other and, just doing little kind of funny things.
Yeah, there's sort of the grounded part of the Hollywood celebrity experience, so that while everybody else's, media presence is what's the circus this week, or what's the
Yeah, exactly. I hope nobody just remember.
They're like, they're like the boring, nice, normal couple over there. They just, wait a second, have careers, lives, children, and any headlines again are positive, warm and fuzzy, and almost like, gee, look at these two, successful and boring. How did that happen?
And honestly, nobody come after me if, anytime after Christmas 2022, there's any scandals. I don't want to hear about it because I don't know that yet. Just don't get mad at me.
I want my Kevin Bacon and my Kira Sedgwick to say exactly the way they are.
Yeah, let's just keep it that way. It's like, I was watching, speaking of Disney Plus, they have all the Simpsons on there. And I was watching an old episode of The Simpsons where Mel Gibson guest starred. And the whole joke was how much everyone loved him. And so it was like, that didn't.
Oh, God.
It's like that. My kids could watch that now and they'd be like, what? I don't know. What? Isn't this the guy? Anyway, that's so, found family is a big part of this, actually, as we're looking at it. And that really does touch on a lot of the things. And you feel like they had the balance. I felt like they had the balance in a good way, mostly because this is the measure for me of a balance between heartwarming and humor. I think that it gets in trouble when you have to install humor in a lot of the touching scenes. And what I mean by that, it's not that you can't, but that's even more delicate. So, that would be like if they really broke and something super crazy happened during the part where she's telling him, I'm your sister. It's like, oh, well, let's detract from that with humor. I think what we're doing at that point, what they're doing when they tell a story like that, is they're showing a lack of faith that the audience will go there. And my ultimate example for that is actually the show Brooklyn Nine-Nine. If you go back and watch it, which it's fun, we go back and watch it a lot in my household. But, when they have Adam Sandberg make any kind of serious statement in the first couple seasons, it's immediately followed by a joke. Whereas you look at especially the last season, they had a lot of serious subjects because they had to take on the police brutality and the racism that was coming out. And they almost didn't do the last season because they didn't want to necessarily, they didn't know if they should bring something that showed cops.
Yeah. How do you deal with the reality around you in a way that fits in both with the style of the show and at the same time acknowledges the reality?
And yeah, exactly. And so the last, really, there were, I don't know, I would say, I don't really, I'm making up because I haven't gone through and chronicled this, but I'd say the last three, especially the last two seasons, they have a lot of more where even that character, who's a silly character, can say something and then just end the scene without going like, oh, wow, I made a serious statement. Ha, ha, ha. And that's why I think so. Sometimes you do see, and so I guess in that way, by my criteria, they really did come through on the heartwarming thing because I didn't feel like I didn't pick up anywhere where they sabotaged the heartwarming points with humor too much. I don't know. That's just me. That's my big measure.
Yeah, no, there was, again, it checked off all the boxes in terms of doing the right things. It had, the right amount of, again, sentimentality. Again, there's certain things you expect with this. Yeah. And at the same time, they still had the action adventure, the fight scenes, and again, the humor was placed in the right spot. So things like, again, like wanting to go back for his little green man and, whatever. And then, no. Well, like, why do you have yours? And but again, that's totally like kids at Christmas with the candy, right? Well, just because you ate all the candy in your stocking doesn't mean that I can't hold on to mine and, eat it much more judiciously over the next week. That's a you problem. Right. I was responsible.
And then, of course, Mercy sneaks in at the end when she gives him the thing.
Yeah. So, no, I think they did a brilliant job. And it's one of those things where it wasn't heavy-handed. Again, I think back to the Lucas and the Life Day. It was not handled quite as, it gets points in a nostalgia kind of way and for what they were trying to do. But I see how folks learned from that and other things that have come since and found this nice way of, here, we're going to give you your guardians, your superheroes, your little taste of the MCU, but we're going to give you all of those things. So if you're not the kind of person that's going to watch the Hallmark movie or watch the whatever, here, you get to check off that same, you're not being left out of the broader genre. You're getting, the Venn diagram now has, poked the MCU into there, and you've got your little bit of your seasonal overlap. And honesty and consistency within the MCU.
Absolutely. Well, this has been great to talk. I knew it would be, and I hope everybody out there when this releases, I think we're going to be in between Christmas and New Year's in the United States and Canada. We have the same one, right?
Yep. Yeah, all the same holidays. Yeah.
I haven't gone through and checked.
Well, I don't know about you folks, but we also have a large, where I live, we also have a large Ukrainian population. So we have both the, we also have the Ukrainian or the Orthodox Christmas. So it's in January around the same time, I think Epiphany hits.
Oh,
yeah. So
that's the thing.
So there's two Christmases.
Yeah, especially with an international audience, I really need to acquaint myself a little bit more with traditions and whatever. But I still come from my background and experience, which is a limitation of my holiday episodes. I will gladly admit, and there's a 2023 goal. When next time this rolls around, I should have a little more knowledge of when these things happen. But wherever you are, whoever you are, or whenever you are out there, whether you're living now when we're broadcasting this or in the future, I hope that you have a wonderful holiday season, or not. If you don't observe a holiday, I still hope you have a wonderful time. I'd say this is worth a watch. And if you want to watch it again or haven't watched it yet, maybe think about like the dynamics that we've talked about, these psychological dynamics of found family and, re-socializing ourselves, reparenting ourselves, because it's in there. Even though you could just say this is something silly, it's in there. So, all right.
Yep.
Thanks everybody for listening.
Enjoy your holidays too, Dwight.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Court Arts Podcast Network. To listen to more Court Arts shows, visit courtemparts.com.